Well, we're here at our base at the CoLab in the Letterkenny Institute of Technology, DonegalSportHub.com. My colleagues Alan Foley and Chris McNulty are with me. And of course, we've been previewing the Radio the Donegal Senior Championship here in Donegal over the last number of weeks in association with our friend Brendan Braddis O'Donnell, Jackson's Media TV. And we're going to do the same today. But Alan, just before we move on, it's been a great week for DonegalSportHub.com because we've reached 100,000 unique visitors. You're the man keeping an eye on those numbers. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, we just came across that total yesterday, which was Monday. Charlie, just myself and Chris checked it, just tipped over the 100,000 mark. So that's actual people that have used the site. And we've worked out it's 127 countries at the minute. So it's good enough going after almost 3 months now in existence.
Very good. And have we figured out what countries are not listening to us and what we need to do about that?
We've only Belarus to start in Europe, anyway, Charlie.
Belarus, well, we'll certainly make strides there. Now, Chris, we're looking forward to the Senior Championship final. Most people saying the best two teams have reached the final. That's a repetitive thing that we've heard over the last number of weeks. St Eunan's against Naomh Conaill. You and I have to hold our hands up and say we tipped Kilcar to beat Naomh Conaill. Naomh Conaill looked very impressive in that semi-final.
Yeah, Naomh Conaill, I suppose, very much like we said about St Eunan's, we were waiting on the big display from them when they came out of the group after they were so impressive against St Eunan's that day in O'Donnell Park. They sort of lumped over the line against Termon, but it's like that old thing you say about teams when they put in a performance like that. It's the perfect way to maybe win a championship game, but they were so impressive, and very much like St Eunan's have been. They were kind of ruthless against Kilcar. They cut Kilcar open time and time again, scored 4 goals and could probably have had another 4 had they really put the shooting boots on in that second half, because they tore Kilcar asunder from first whistle to last bar. Maybe that wee period where Kilcar threatened to come back into the game, but Naomh Conaill were utterly dominant, and definitely, Charlie, the best two teams are in the final. Like we've talked, I suppose, about St Eunan's and how they've put Glenswilly and St Michael's, two of the perceived big guns, to the sword in quarter and semi-finals, and coming good like all good championship teams. I suppose very much, Charlie, like a horse race trainer for the Gold Cup at Cheltenham. He doesn't want his horse going full tilt at a bumper in Chepstow back in January. He wants it full tilt for the middle of March, and the exact same with Maxi Curran and Martin Regan. They want their side full tilt for this Sunday, and I think we can expect to see the two teams at 100% this weekend.
Yeah, Alan, St Eunan's have come a long way since that defeat by Naomh Conaill in the group match, and we spoke to Maxi Curran after that game, and he was quite down that day because it was a very poor performance by them, and that in no way takes away from how good a performance it was by Naomh Conaill. But I suppose getting Glenswilly in the quarter final was really the catalyst for their season, and it got them going.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the nature of the defeat to Naomh Conaill, and now it probably was the best thing could have happened, because if they had limped over the line, maybe got a late goal or two and lost by 3 or 4, they might have thought, you know what, maybe we were unlucky or another day. But the fact it was so bad, really, there was only one way to come out of it, and as you said, the draw against Glenswilly was probably what they needed at the time. And it's interesting, like we spoke maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago, saying there was 5 teams in it, they're all so equal. Then we went down, there was 4 teams in it, they're all so equal. Now we're 2 teams and they're still pretty equal. So it shows maybe that there's a bit of a rivalry developing in Donegal football. If you look even down through the ranks, that the minor level this year, St Eunan's managed to beat Naomh Conaill in the final. Naomh Conaill beat St Eunan's in the league minor final. The 21s, they're probably the best 2 teams. They're heading towards the collision course again, and now they're in the 4th senior final since 2005. So it's becoming a bit of a rivalry, alright, yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, Chris, there's going to be big matchups on Sunday, and Martin Regan and Cathal Corey are going to be looking at St Eunan's. Maxi Curran and Brendan Kilcoyne and their team are going to be looking at Naomh Conaill, and both teams are very astute at getting the matchups right. But now we've got the clash of the giants. Those matchups are going to be so key as to who gets the better of them.
Yeah, they are, absolutely, and I suppose the two teams' strengths are in different areas, which probably makes the matchups all the more important. Like, you look at what St Eunan's have in that midfield sector. Like, they have so much power, so much height, so much experience in there as well. You look at Naomh Conaill on the forward line they have, and they showed against Kilcar like how deadly they are. And I suppose it's one thing that Maxi's really got nailed on this year has been the matchups. You look at the day they beat St Michael's, where he stationed Conor Morrison, traditionally, I suppose, a cornerback, a real sort of tough defender.
Yeah.
Up he went onto the half forward line and took Daniel McLaughlin out of the game. I know he was withdrawn early in the second half, but that sort of showed how adaptable St Eunan's are. Niamh Connell the same. I mean, Martin Regan really sort of threw a cat among the pigeons and playing young Owen McGettigan. His name had never appeared in a senior team sheet for Niamh Connell, even in league, and Comórtas Palna Gaeltacht done nothing. And he went to a county semi-final, and what a performance, what a debut. Again, could we see a surprise flung by either the two managers in terms of position, in terms of selection on Sunday? The two managers are really sort of cute, I suppose.
And they have plenty of scope in terms of team selection.
Yeah, they have.
Plenty of scope.
And I suppose the benches as well, we always talk about strength and depth, and it's maybe a bit of a cliche, when you talk about some teams, but these two teams really are teams with strength and depth. Like Mark McGowan coming off the bench the last day for St Eunan's, he's been in and around county panels, he's been in, no amount of county finals. You look then at Niamh Connell, Brent McDyer coming back from injury the last day, and so much experience that, in their team, the likes of Johnny Boner, Johnny McClune, those men who were so vital back in 2005, 10 years ago. I know it's hard to believe. And you look then at what St Eunan's have, and the likes of Keelan Warden, Conor Morrison, who I mentioned, they're playing in, winning county finals for the first time last year. That experience then of going in and winning in Ulster is so vital to them. The two teams as well have so much experience at county level, and you look at somebody like Kieran Thompson, who wasn't making the Niamh Connell team last year and was such a big part of the county under-21s, was then called into the senior training panel by Rory Gallagher, and is now really making a mark in the championship. Two teams with real, I suppose, no real weaknesses, Charlie, on either side.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we talk about, and you have to, when you talk about St Eunan's, Rafferty, Kavanagh, Harn, Connell, Dunn, Eamon Doherty's coming into that category. He's playing his 6th final and he's won all 5, and then you've got the sprinkling of younger players around them as well. But those key men will have to play well if St Eunan's are to take another title. They depend so much on them, Alan.
Yeah, and as you said, experience is absolutely massive. We were just totting up there John Harn, we reckon, what was his 12th county final, Rory Kavanagh, Connell Dunn one behind, Kevin Rafferty we think just one behind that. If you tot all them up plus the replay, you're hitting 45 county finals. That's 4 guys. And as you said, even Eamon Doherty, 5 out of 5. Mark McGowan lost 1-1-5, and still a relatively young man, in his mid-20s as well. So they're the sort of guys St Eunan's depend on. And as Chris mentioned, even like last year, Kevin Rafferty went off with a serious injury after 9 or 10 minutes against Linswilly. Mark McGowan, who hadn't played a lot of football, come in, and people even doubted whether he had 50 minutes in him. Yeah. But he just showed how good a player he was to get them through that. So they're really the kind of the core of the St Eunan's team, I suppose.
As Chris mentioned, and just looking at the stats, and I was really surprised at this. The Glenties team that played in 2005, there's 9 or 10 of them still involved, so a lot of experience there now as well, although a lot of them are still young lads, very, very experienced players.
Yeah, it was famously said that day. Nicky Brennan was in the press box, the president of the GA at the time, and he looked at the Niamh Connell team and he says those guys in the blue, they're kids. Yeah. And they came through 2 tough games there, won the first senior title, and that really set things going because they had a bit of success before that, and they built on that with under 21s, of course, added a second county title, got to an Ulster club final 2010, so that was really the kind of traction year for Niamh Connell, I suppose. And as you said, those guys are still, some of them guys are still only 26, 27 now, so they're still in the prime of their careers.
Yeah, it's going to be a great match-up. We're going to have to call it, Alan. You went with Eunan's previously in the semi-final to beat St Michael's, which a lot of people felt could be a tricky one for them. What do you think?
Yeah, they came through that game with flying colours, and I don't want to keep going on about the experience, but I think when it gets to a kind of a crux point, that's what gets teams through. And I think the two teams now, as we said, have that sort of experience, and the two managers are quite similar in their outlook. They're 2 young managers, two bright guys, you know what I mean? And I think that basically they know each other inside out. As we said, that there's been a rivalry, but down the years sometimes it was a bit flaky, that rivalry. There was a bit of trouble, but in the last maybe 5 or 6 years it's been just a completely pure football rivalry.
A lot of respect there between the two teams.
Absolutely, between the two. So I think really it just comes down, as I said, that they can almost nearly cancel each other out. They're so aware of each other, so it might just come down to something more simplistic, maybe just heart and desire on the day. So it really is a toss-up, and
you're sounding like a draw.
Oh, I'm pretty much near a draw, yeah, but I might just edge St Eunan's by 1 point.
Okay.
But really with not a lot of conviction.
With an exclamation mark. Okay.
Yes.
Chris, Eunan's by 1 point, he thinks. He got it right in the semi-final, and I think he got it wrong in the quarter-final. You got it right in the quarter-final and wrong in the semi-final, so come on. What do you think?
I think, Charlie, the way St Eunan's have come through Glenswally and St Michael's. They're going in as favourites, rightly so. We've talked about the experience. I think an interesting thing as well about the two teams, you look at two relatively young managers who are sort of, earning their corn now at senior level, but they're also the right-hand men are two men with such vast experience on the sideline. Max is joined there by Brenton Kilcoyne, who managed St Eunan's to a few county finals in his time. Cathal Corey's alongside Martin Regan now for the championship. Guided Naomh Conaill to the Ulster final in 2010. That's also huge experience to have in a dressing room. When you have two young managers that are in sort of cutting their teeth, if you like, to have that experience within a dressing room is huge. But looking at Sunday, Charlie, I think St Eunan's have really sort of put down a marker in the last couple of games, and for me, I wouldn't say maybe St Eunan's to lose. Look, Naomh Conaill have had their big injury troubles. St Eunan's are coming in, bar I think Darragh Mulgrew, injury free. To me, St Eunan's to pull away maybe in the last 10 minutes and win by 3 or 4.
Alright, so the two boys are going for St Eunan's. I'm going to make it 3 out of 3 for St Eunan's as well, but again, exclamation mark, I think it's going to be a very tight final, a great final between the best teams in the county, and let's hope from a spectator point of view that that's exactly what it'll be. But I think St Eunan's, with that experience, might just edge it.
We should ask the cameraman for a prediction, Charlie.
Well, the cameraman's here, and funny, Chris, it was in my head just to ask Bradis, because he keeps very quiet here, and we've got 3 for St Eunan's. Bradis, come on, what are you saying here?
Naomh Conaill.
1 for Naomh Conaill. Well, you wouldn't expect anything else from Bradis. He couldn't go back to Glentis if he said anything else. Just to let you know that on the site this week we have a big build-up, big preview to the county final. You'll be able to hear from both managers, Martin Regan from Naomh Conaill and Maxie Curran from St Eunan's, both captains, Rory Kavanagh from St Eunan's and Leo McAloon from Naomh Conaill. Players from both sides, Eamon Doherty and John O'Malley, who'd have very important roles for their respective teams. And I also want to tell you that we've recorded a podcast with county players Neil Gallagher and Eamon McGee, looking forward to the senior final, of course, on Sunday, and indeed looking forward to the reserve final, which I'm just going to ask the boys about in 2 seconds here. The boys, Neil and Eamon, have some very interesting views, and also just to tip you off that Eamon McGee speaks exclusively to us about where he's at in terms of his inter-county career going forward into 2016. You'll find that very interesting. Alan, just before we finish, our draw against Glenswally, let's not forget, important to those two clubs as well. How do you think that one will go?
Yeah, there's nothing in it either. Charlie, our draw came through a replay there at the weekend after a real ding-dong in the banks the week before. Glenswally came through too. They knocked out St Eunan's, the holders. Yeah. Then they did win over 4 Masters, who are always strong at intermediate level. Again, it's a toss of a coin. Really hard to pick a winner as well.
Go on.
I'll go for Glenswally by a point in this
Glenswally. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to go for Glenswally as well. I think we were at the press launch last night, and very, I suppose, interesting the makeup of the two teams. They've both got a couple of senior championship winners, and both with a big influx of young players. Are draw with the likes of Peter McHugh and Stephen Gildagan back to the early noughties, 2000 and I think 2004. They've senior championship medals from, and then Glenswally, John Brocco McFadden and Brian Shardy McDade, who were in an Ulster final panel just a couple of years ago, and the likes of them Kevin Marley and stuff coming in there. For me, Eddie Glacken's team to win by a couple.
Okay, I'm going to go for Glenswally because my ancestors come from there, and they'd never forgive me if I tipped Ardra to beat them in the senior final. We'll look forward to 2 great finals, and again, just to remind you, that podcast with Neil Gollard, Eamon McGee, you'll find it very interesting.